turn to page 1. Actually, before page 1, let's see if you have any questions about the empowerment, what you heard there, what you saw there, what you thought there. Any questions regarding the experience of the empowerment? Not the book, not the text, the empowerment. Any questions? Surely there are. Louder.
Jamyang asks, which of the 4 levels of Tantra do these 4 deity practices belong to? Are they all the same level of Tantra in the jewel garland of sadhana?
Generally speaking, yeah. They are. So the question is related to the division of Tantra practice into the 4 levels of what's known as action Tantra, performance Tantra, yoga Tantra, and unexcelled yoga Tantra. So in especially Indian, then following that Tibetan tantric exegesis, there is often a concern of identifying, this tantra or this practice or this deity and that is this level, this level, this level, and this level. So overall, you could say that Ushnisha Vijaya, Vasudhara, then in July Gurukule, and in August Ekajata, that they are from the action Tantra, the first of the 4. But it's often being observed that in the context of Tibet, while the deity, or that particular form of that deity, might be said to be from the action Tantra category of the 4 Tantras, often their practice text is written in such a way that it's practiced as an unexcelled yoga Tantra style. Unexcelled yoga Tantra style of practice. From when you look at the collected works of the early Kagyu masters, such as Gampopa, then Jigten Sumgan, Mahamudra, I cannot say so much about Mahamudra because I have not really looked at. But the impression you get when you look at like Gampopa and when you look at Jigten Sumgan, the impression you get there is that they were not so concerned about what level of Tantra this or that practice is. They place their focus and emphasis on bodhicitta. Within the context of 12th century Tibet, the people who were concerned and also concerned to keep the categories clear, to keep the divisions clear and clean, basically the Sakyapas. The Sakyapas were real real masters of Tantra. And all the ins and outs of Tantra and Tantra exegesis, Tantra theory, of course Tantra practice, all of it. The early Kagyupas tend to focus more on bodhicitta and Mahamudra, and basically are kind of loosey-goosey about formal categories and divisions. So in fact, one of the early tensions between these two groups, was along these lines. Sakyapas will criticize the Kagyupas and say that, you guys are too loosey-goosey. Then of course the early Kagyupas will say, you Sakyapas are so rigid. In the end, I think, if you ask me, then it's what your kind of personal style is, what you're attracted to. So instead, what you see more in the early Kagyupa masters is they don't criticize, like the clear division and all that. It's just that their energy is spent somewhere else. Now, unless you get these two groups to debate each other, which they did, but usually the debate was just things written back and forth, And these debates are very indirect, very Asian style. It's like, some people say, and then some people assert, and some people claim, things like that. So never quite like direct debate. Sometimes that happens, but a lot of times. So the energy of the early Kagyupa masters seem to have been spent more on Lojong on the one hand, changing mind. Then on the other hand, Mahamudra. Mahamudra in the style of Gampopa's style of Mahamudra. Because the term Mahamudra is found in the Tantras, and they often, that term in the Tantras is simply another word for enlightenment, Mahamudra. But when Gampopa talks about Mahamudra, he's talking about a method of practice. Sure, he talks about Mahamudra, like the ground of Mahamudra, the path of Mahamudra, and the result of Mahamudra. In the talking of the result of Mahamudra, very similar to the Sakyapas. But in terms of talking about the path of Mahamudra, that seemed to have been something that Gampopa emphasized. And depending on who you read, of course, according to Gampopa, he didn't make this up. He received this from his teachers. Of course, the most famous of his teachers was Milarepa, right? But Milarepa wasn't his only teacher. He also had Kadampa teachers who were in the tradition of Atisha. So a lot of the mind training, the bodhicitta emphasis comes from that particular stream. Interestingly, when you look at Milarepa, if you look at the life of Milarepa and the so-called 100,000 songs of Milarepa, which by the way is not 100,000, it's not even 1,000. It just means many. A big collection of Milarepa's song will be a more accurate translation of the title. A literal translation is the 100,000 songs of Milarepa. So next time when you receive like Ngondro teachings, if the Tibetan Lama says, you have to do 100,000, you can ask them, can I do it like Milarepa's 100,000 songs? See if they catch the joke. Sure, 100,000 in the style of Milarepa songs. Anyway, interestingly, if you look at Milarepa's 100,000 songs, right? I was curious actually the other day. I suspected, I noticed, and now that a lot of these are translated, and not only translated, but they are in e-text, So I did a search for usual suspects. Tara doesn't turn up at all in Milarepa's 100,000 songs. Manjushri doesn't turn up at all. The usual suspects, Vajrapani doesn't turn up at all. Then much less all these other more obscure, like Gurukule, Vasudhara, no. Avalokiteshvara turned up 2 places. But it's not even about him. It's mention of so-and-so practice. The one deity, other than like Chakasamvara and Vajrayogini, yes, it says Milarepa practiced those 2. But the other deity that is mentioned that Milarepa did practice, interestingly, is Ushnisha Vijaya. But not the other you would think, like Medicine Buddha. No. Jambala. No. So you can see these early Kagyupa masters did not necessarily practice that many deities. In their case, it almost seems like one deity, they are satisfied. Then you look at Gampopa's collected works. I also searched. I think also no Tara mentioned. Very few deity names are mentioned in his works. So that gives us an idea of like the early Kagyupas, like what they were doing, what they were up to. Looking at Jidin Sumgön's collection, definitely more deities are mentioned and instructions for practicing this or that deity. They are there. A good number of texts on how to practice Akshobhya. It's there. Here and there are some Tara instructions here and there. There's some praises to Avalokiteshvara. A praise or 2 composed for like Panashavari, the goddess that prevents epidemics. Which she has been very busy the last 2 years. Everybody, suddenly, started to call her, And of course, we're like, I text you so many times and you didn't answer. My response would be, text is cheap, man. Write me an email. Maybe I'll answer. Anyway, I digress. Yeah.
Someone asks about what foods are not allowed to eat on empowerment days. Some say garlic, onions, eggs. I even heard of beans. How do we know how to proceed, and what is the reason?
What to eat or what not to eat on empowerment days. What to do, what not to do. What are the requirements? What are the commitments? The general approach I would say to you is, unless they tell you, don't ask. This is my lazy approach. Unless they specifically tell you, don't ask. Because once you ask and they tell you and you can't do, you're going to start to have what we call namto, conceptual thoughts. You're going to get superstitious. You're going to undermine, right? So if they tell you, that means it's important enough that they're telling you. Because there's so much that you can get into about do's and don'ts and this and that. Some you can accept, some you cannot accept. Do you really want to know all these things? Well, at one point, I would like to know. At this point, I don't want to know. To be serious, it's not that I don't want to know because I don't want to keep them. I don't want to know in the sense of I trust that whoever is giving the program, if they feel strongly enough about certain things, they will tell. Also, the other thing is like, you might go to one empowerment, right? And no terms are set, so to say, right? Just come, so-and-so is giving an empowerment. Then you go, right? Then at the end, they say, okay, now I'm your guru. You cannot go anywhere else. You have to follow me. You never have to be caught like that. I will say that if you ask my opinion. Then you're like, no, I did not come here thinking that, I'm going to commit to something like this. That's not what you advertised, so to say. That's not the deal. So don't get stressed over that. Don't get wrong views about things like that. I think it's very damaging. Now, in terms of dietary restrictions, especially practices like Tara in general, then it is said that you should maintain a diet that is clean. Of course, from the perspective of a kind diet, then basically the lower the food chain that you eat, the kinder it is in general. I don't think we can argue that, right? That's the perspective of kindness. But often these food restrictions, whenever they turn up, it has more to do with ideas of like being clean. Being clean. So in the Indian context, strong smelling vegetables are considered unclean. In the Brahmin culture, meat definitely unclean. So you don't eat dead animals because it contaminates your body. Garlic, onion, chives, all this strong smelling, unclean, so they don't eat. Eggs, unclean. Beans, also unclean. Like devotees of Krishna, on certain days of the month, they avoid eating grains. This might have to do with medical traditions as well. So Ayurveda and tradition, TCM, Chinese medicine, there are things about grains, that consuming grains is considered to, in the Chinese system, in the Chinese Taoist system, there are these three literally killers. San, sha, killers that reside in the body, and they eat the grains that you eat. Then they secrete, they poop, and their poop is the cause of illness. They block the passage that qi travels. So in Taoist traditions, there's avoiding grains. So the beans and the grains, it's somewhat related to things like this. So eggs are considered also like dark food, also avoid. Yeah.
What role do the retinues of the deities play in the four activities? Do the retinues carry out the activities in any visualizations? And then there's an example, for example, where we send out Achala or Kamaraja in 9-deity Uchnisha Vajrayana, in any visualization for magnetizing or wrathful.
Yeah, generally the question about the retinue and the activities. In these sadhanas that we have, it's, the activity part is not emphasized. First, as I said, you do the approach practice. You have to get close to the deities. You have to get intimate with the deities. You got to get familiar with the deities. Then you actualize the deity. You accomplish the deity. Not like ultimately accomplishing you'll be a Buddha, but there's a certain point you have to get to that you can say, yeah, I can, embody this deity fairly well, at least on the relative level. Then you might be given ritual texts that is called the activities section. But what we have here, we don't have. Again, I think if we go back to early Kagyupas, they were not concerned about these types of. So we're kind of poor when it comes to that area. Or Kagyupa, early Kagyupa priorities are somewhere else. Gilbert Rinpoche says, if you can subdue the 8 worldly concerns, you can perform all kinds of activities without any ritual. If you have 8 worldly concerns, whatever ritual you do, they will backfire. That's his answer. Well, I'm editing one text. He said, editing one text by Gilbert Rinpoche, he said, this is in the section where he's talking about Yidam practice, so it's relevant to here. He said, there are cases, he says, sometimes when practicing idam, due to some people having received instructions related to manipulating of energies, can temporarily produce kind of, you could say, special experiences. He said, but these cases, he says, if these individuals, he says, don't follow the instructions of the Guru and oppose the instructions of the Gurus. Earlier in this text, he says the instructions of the Gurus is to go to the forest. Go to the forest, set up a hut that gives up wealth and fame. So in front, in this text, he talks a lot about what the Gurus tell you to do, what your Gurus tell you to do. And there, of course, he starts off the text by false Gurus. Then he says, you follow those Gurus, the more you follow, the more trouble you'll get into. You follow the right Gurus, they tell you to go to the forest. Then back to idam, he says, if instead of following your Guru, you get caught up in those things, then you're actually opposing what your Guru taught you. Then, he says, you will burn in Vajra hell in the form of your idam. Very strong words. He says, so you will be Ushnisha Vijaya with 4 hands and 3 faces, but burning in Vajra hell. That section on idam. And he said, then he says, therefore, be very careful. Watch out, he says, Yes. Wait, what was the question again?
What role do the retinues of the day?
Oh, right. So activities, right. So generally, yes. Then okay, let's zoom out. I'm not assuming that all of you are interested particularly in what the early Kagyupas did, but I have to say those things because that's what I am more invested in. Okay, now let's zoom out. Okay, a bigger picture. First of all, the retinues in a mandala. First of all, we need to understand that there are 2 types of retinues. There are the worldly retinues and then the world transcending retinues. The worldly retinues are said to be on the outer periphery of the mandala. So these are worldly beings who have pledged their support of this particular practice for a particular set of reasons. Often there are stories telling how they were recruited by a great master or a Buddha to serve in the capacity as the outer layer of protection, protecting the integrity of this practice. So they are the outer worldly retinue. In those terms, then, these are seen as other beings like you and me, but they are in the spirit form or in the God realm form or in the, whatever realm. So they stand guard, doing the job that they pledged to do. Then the other set of retinue, the world transcending retinue, those are to be recognized as aspects of your own mind or your own being, not just mind. Because, for example, usually in the 4 directions, let's say in Jakasamvara, main idam of many Kagyupas, there are the 4 dakinis in the 4 direction. So these 4 dakinis are 4 aspects of your own being, often associated with the 4 elements. And then in the intermediate, there might be 4 more, and up and down, right? Now you have 10. So like in Nirmanakaya, there are 10 of these dakinis. And then, depending on each tantra, these world-transcending retinue deities, they are mapped up, identified with different aspects of your own being, and also different Buddha qualities. So there are, like these kind of fancier rituals. All these fancy rituals, especially rituals that when you look, it's quite clear, cannot be done by one person, involves a group of people. That mostly in the history of Tibetan Buddhism, they started to really explode in the Tibetan world around 17th century, 16th century. Prior to that, there isn't that many of this kind of material. 4 volumes of Gampopa, for example. Again, I know these texts more than the other. The 4 volumes of Gampopa's collected works, not a single, maybe one sadhana. The rest are just instructions. Like, do this, then this, then this. Like the steps that we find in the sadhana, they are mentioned. But no like text to recite, text to chant, text to perform. 12 volumes of Jigden Sumgan, also very few this kind of ritual texts. So ritual texts started to proliferate in Tibetan Buddhism, starting around 16th, 17th century.
Can you speak to the history and structure of empowerment that you did this morning? Specifically, is the empowerment part of a larger group?
Yeah. So that empowerment comes from a collection of empowerments called the Garland of Sardines, of 50 deities. These 50 deities came into Drigung Kagyu in the 17th century. I think prior to that, Drigung Kagyu didn't really have, this kind of like 50 deities, but in the 17th century, the first Chungsang Rinpoche, Drigung Dhammakirti, he compiled, and he was responsible for a lot of ritual texts that we all in Drigung Kagyu we use today. So he was well educated to produce these texts, and also he sought out the transmissions. I don't have like definite like evidence. Not that it's hidden. It's just I didn't go specifically look. But if I remember correctly, he compiled this set of 50 deities after his brother gave him a larger set of deity transmissions, deity empowerments. I suspect that his brother probably gave him a set that has 108 deities. And then he kind of narrowed it down to 50. And his brother, who was his brother? So this is his second oldest brother. And his second oldest brother was the sixth Shamar Rinpoche of the Kamma tradition. So we know, like today still, Kamma has a set of 108 deities. And that set is called Knowing One Liberates All. Kind of an interesting title for a set of 108 deities that you can go choose from, right? This buffet of deities. And then the title says, if you know one, then you have all of them. So it could be that Rigzin Chodra, Drigong Dhammakirti, got that from his brother. So often in Drigong Kagyu, when deities like Tara, Green Tara, White Tara, Manjushri, is given, they are given from this collection. So it starts off with the first empowerment being the Buddha Shakyamuni empowerment, then 4 or 5 different forms of Avalokiteshvara, which in the larger set, the 108, probably there's 10 different forms of Avalokiteshvara, different colors, different number of hands, different number of heads. This has 4 or 5 Avalokiteshvara, followed by maybe 3 or 4 Manjushri, and then maybe 2 or 3 Vajrapanis, then a number of Taras, then the collection of what is known as the 5 goddesses, which is popular in Nepal still today, the 5 protective goddesses. Then the Jambala group, there's a number of them. Yellow Jambala, Black Jambala, Vasudhara, Maitreya. Maitreya somehow is associated with abundance too in this collection. Then a number of goddesses, Idam, with many heads and hands. Then maybe 5 or 6 different forms of the slayer of death, Yamantaka. Then altogether, then 2 forms of Panyaparamita, 2 forms of Kurukule, white and red. Altogether 50. The last one is Mahakala. So then, in terms of their sadhana, the basic structure is going to be the same. So this is a good segue. So they all begin with Om Shunyata Gyana Vajraswabhava Amakoham. So that is the Emptiness Mantra. Then it says, all phenomena subsume under dharmas and dharmata. Dharmas and dharmata means phenomena and the nature of phenomena. Right? So all phenomena, whether you look at them from the perspective of how they appear, which is the dharmas, and how they truly are, which is dharmata, or all phenomena divided into subject and object, all of that naturally turn into a great expanse of empty luminosity. So now, what is hinted to us is the natural state is this empty luminosity. So these are 2 qualities of our minds, related to the nature of our minds. Right? Mind is empty of essence, empty of fixity, empty of inherent existence, common expression you will come across, yet luminous, yet clear, yet has this quality of knowing. So mind is often associated with space, but they always say, unlike space, because What mind shares with space is unimpeded, no beginning, no end, no center, no periphery. Mind and space equally like this. Mind and space equally, you cannot create it. You cannot say this side, upside, downside. Yeah? Both mind and space. But where mind has, that space doesn't have, is the quality of knowing. The capacity to know. This capacity to know is this luminosity. So this great expanse of empty luminosity means everything basically has this nature and this appearance. When they appear clearly. Luminosity. Although they appear clearly, they lack inherent being, independent being, substantial being. That is the empty. So this great expanse of empty luminosity is the inborn state of perfect bliss. As in, we are all already naturally in the Buddha state. But we have not realized this, and instead we have mistaken this or that to be who we are, rather than this empty luminosity, which is naturally. Inborn means naturally. Inborn means nobody created it this way. Nobody need to make it this way. It is already perfect bliss. Bliss means, freedom from suffering. So you begin this sadhana practice by first meditating on this aspect or this understanding of the nature of mind and the nature of phenomena. You could say this is a training in cultivating Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya. The next section, Tongpengangle Sungwe Kolo. Then from that state of emptiness appears. From here means within. Right? Within this state. From, not that, something is derived that separates from. No. So you could say within, right? Within this state, within this emptiness luminosity, appears a vast protection sphere. In the middle of it, a golden bum. So the seed syllable of Vasudhara is bum. Right? It's pronounced in between a V and a B. Bum. So appears a golden bum syllable, which is on a multicolored lotus with a sun disk in the center. So this is training in Sambhogakaya. So these are symbolic forms, right? Thumb syllable, lotus, and sun. These are symbols. So likewise, Sambhogakaya is the forms that Buddhas manifest to communicate in the most subtle way. It's said that only 8th level bodhisattvas have the capacity to actually see Sambhogakaya forms. Although, from the perspective of Tibetan art, Buddhas that are dressed with a crown, with silks, we call that Sambhogakaya form. But that's a technical term for Tibetan art. The actual Sambhogakayas, you and I have no capacity to experience, to perceive them. unless you're at an 8th level bodhisattva. Which is to say that as we advance on the path, we have more and more access to the Dharmakaya. So between the Nirmanakaya and the Dharmakaya are the Sambhogakayas. So here the Sambhogakayas, the training in creating the causes, right, for actualizing Sambhogakaya is to meditate on this protection sphere, in the middle of which there is a golden palm syllable seated on a lotus cushion, a sun cushion, which is resting on a multicolored lotus. Then the third part, myself as goddess Vasudhara, refined gold in color, divinely youthful, perfectly adorned with ornaments and garments, right? All those details there, that is now Nirmanakaya. It's the seen and heard and smelled and touched aspect of the deity. So then they're called Nirmanakaya because they are the manifested form. Now, where does this idam come from? From the syllable. Where does the syllable come from? Emptiness. Where does emptiness come from? It is. Your mind. Then your mind here, more specifically, what mind? Buddha mind. More specifically? Bodhicitta. The deity is bodhicitta in a particular form. Deity can arise from the three poisons: anger, attachment, and confusion. So we have to make sure that the deity that arises for us arises from bodhicitta. So an authentic, true deity is the deity that arises from the power of bodhicitta. So as you train in this practice, if your visualization is not clear, your experience of Vasudhara is fuzzy, work on deepening your bodhicitta. When your bodhicitta becomes more and more stable, then the deity that appears can also become more and more stable, more and more clear. In one of the, I think, Vajrayogini Tantras, it says, meditators or people who practice vajrayana, people who practice deity yoga, are training to embody bodhicitta through visualizing the deity, and not training to become statues and paintings. It says, what's the point? You're not training to become a statue or a painting. You're training to embody bodhicitta. So let the deity arise from bodhicitta. What does that mean? What does that mean? To say, let the deity arise as bodhicitta. What does that mean? Anyone? You don't retire that, you know. Somebody has to pay attention to. I cannot see. For the benefit of others. Yeah, so at the very least, right? You have to think, you know. Now I'm visualizing myself as Vasudhara. Why? For the benefit of others. That's one aspect of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a bigger, kind of a more encompassing. Yeah? There is relative and there's ultimate. But relative and ultimate in Buddhist terms doesn't mean, you know, less and more. Okay? It means there are two sides. Two sides that are equally important. So relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, those two have to come together and to be realized as a single. Not like, oh, you know, temporarily this bodhicitta, graduate to this bodhicitta, and you can get rid of the earlier bodhicitta. No, it's not like that, okay? Relative and ultimate are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, it says here, left hand holding ears of grains and a vase. So that line drawing there shows you how. Basically, left hand has this vase almost resting on her left leg. Then a stalk of grains or corn is also held like that. Kind of growing out of here, growing up into the shoulder like this. Like I said, you know, I think mainly whatever the staple is where you are, you know, you visualize her holding that. Vodka should not be a staple. So don't visualize her. Potatoes could be a staple food. So she has these grains. Yeah. Gesture of giving. This is giving, gesture of generosity. Then Ratna Sambhava sits on her crown and as her crown, like an ornament on her head, is the Buddha Ratna Sambhava. Ratna Sambhava is usually depicted, if you want the iconography for this. So Ratna Sambhava is one of the five Buddhas. Usually when the five Buddhas are mentioned as the five Buddhas, you know, they appear in, again, quote-unquote, Sambhogakaya form, meaning they wear a crown, right? Then they have silks, they wear silk, they wear a crown, they have earrings, armlets, bracelets, a long necklace. Then in this case, so seated, cross-legged, full lotus position. Then right hand on the knee in the giving position. Left hand resting in the kind of like meditation posture, but only one hand. But resting like that, in the center is a wish-fulfilling jewel. So that's the symbol of the jewel family, Ratna family. So Vasudhara is part of Ratna family. So in the arrangement of the 5 Buddha families, there are actually 2 systems of arranging them. In the old translation system, Vajrayana is in the middle. Then in the eastern direction is Akshobhya. So Vajrayana is the Buddha family. Buddha family in the center. Then Vajra family in the eastern, in the front. Ratna family on the right, southern. Padma, lotus family in the back, red. And then karma. Karma here is talking about Buddha activities, karma, not confused karma. So karma family, green or black color in the northern direction. Then in the new translation system, Vajra comes to the middle and Buddha family goes to the east. So there's a switch there. The other 3 remains the same. Yeah, so Vasudhara is Ratna family. Then these 4 families actually, I mean, we commonly say 5 Buddha families, 5 Buddha families. But actually it's more that these 4 are derived from the center. So out of the center, 4 directions, 4 families. And this is also where we place the 4 activities. The activity of pacifying is in the eastern direction, white color. The activity of increasing, like today's, right, is yellow in color in the southern direction. The activity of control, magnetize, enchant, red in color, Padma family, western direction. The activity of destroying, northern direction, black in color or very dark green. And that's the karma family. So these are the 4 directions with the 4 activities. These 4 activities basically, again, is talking about the capacity to achieve the purposes of bodhicitta via these 4 methods. Via the method of pacifying suffering, increasing the necessary conditions conducive to Dharma practice, putting under control all the unruly things, and then destroying what needs to be destroyed is the 4th. I would say again, like if we follow the tradition of the early Kagyupas, the early Kagyupa masters, it's not like they don't know, that there are these 4 activities. And it's not that they don't value the notion that Buddhas can use any of these 4 types of methods to bring about people's welfare, to accomplish people's welfare. That means bodhicitta, right? It's not like they don't know. But they don't see the more ritualistic aspects of this to be the way to accomplish these abilities. They were emphasizing more the mind training. That when you dispel, so like increasing, right? Do they practice? Would they practice Vasudhara sadhana? Yes. But as a way of overcoming what? Poverty mind. Related to poverty mind is hungry ghosts suffer from what? Craving. So they will focus on this while practicing this sadhana. Like, let's dismantle this little mind. Not enough, not enough. I'm so disadvantaged, I'm this. Dispel that. They say when you dispel that, effective increasing activity would arise. They would say, yes, there is a special interdependence with Vasudhara, or with Jambala, or with any of the Ratna deities that the Buddha taught us. Buddha did not give these methods without rhyme or reason. So there's some interdependence. Could you use Gurukule? Of course. But generally speaking, the activity of increasing, which is related to the overcoming of poverty mind, overcoming attachment, overcoming miserliness, stinginess, small mind, while practicing Vasudhara. Pay attention to how to remove poverty mind by basically tearing down the limitations. Why poverty mind is poverty mind? Poverty mind is a distortion, right? A caging in of what is originally spacious. So you just have to dismantle. Because we want to claim this little plot of land. Some people's little plot of land is 200 acres. Some people is 20,000 square footage, and some people is 20. Whatever these walls are caging in, remove this. And understand that the essence of Vasudhara is this. Then, without needing this or that method, this or that ritual, you can increase what people need for them. Because now you're embodying that activity of increasing. So in fact, Jiden Sungwan says, the things that seem to get accomplished without you chasing after them, he says that is siddhi. That is, because in vajrayana, there's a lot of talk of siddhis, accomplishments, attainments. Then because there's a lot of ritual texts, related to like activating this siddhi, activating that siddhi, sometimes people get carried away. So then actively they're chasing these siddhis, And Jiden Sungwan warned, he says, Mara can come and show you the things that you want to see. Then before long, you have followed Mara into dangerous places. Right? It says, if you don't chase, so you practice like Vasudhara, right? You practice and you understand the basic principles. Then every mantra that you chant of her, at the beginning it's not so, maybe not so from the heart, but at least from the head, you have this idea. But you chant, you practice, you visualize. But the more you chant, the more you understand. Oh, this is about removing self-grasping, self-limitation, not enough mind. Removing that, then I'm very sure, you're going to like wake up one day and go, wow, I have a lot. I'm, as we would say, I'm blessed. I'm wealthy, Anything about the sadhanas? the sadhana itself. We already looked at the same structure with Ushnisha Vijaya a little bit. Right? Now it has the same structure here. Do we want to identify the main parts of this structure? You want to do that? You're fine with it? Yes? Yes?
Daniela asks, do we practice the same generosity than when we practice Java?
Yeah. Unless you have some other idea of generosity. I mean, there's the same Ratna family principle. Yeah, no difference. Yeah, but there's some tradition that says, between the male deities and the female deities, you can more quickly actualize with the female deities. Culturally, Asian men are kind of lazy. You go to Asia, you see all the people who are working are women. Guys just kind of sit around, Maybe because of that, so they say female deities, very quick, the results. Mom, kick into action very quickly. Dad kind of sit around and think about the problem, Well, maybe that, maybe that, Mom has a yelling baby, It cannot sit and just philosophize. Yes.
Jamila asks, if that's the case, is there a special benefit to male deities?
And some people connect better, with male deities. Nothing is fixed. Yeah? This is just general patterns that they talk about. Yeah. Some people connect much better with male deities. Then that's your connection, So. Basically, practice all deities as one, receive all empowerments as one. Then picking and choosing becomes unnecessary. Yes?
So, if in doing that, though, when we get to the mantra, we tend to focus on what that particular deity is about.
Yeah, of course.
But we're, in general, going through the sadhana, where it doesn't matter as far as it's all one thing, we're always about bodhicitta.
Yes.
I've always wondered, so what to do with the mantra.
What do you mean? Not just a mantra, right?
But I mean, particularly that piece of it.
What do you mean?
Well, it's easier for me thinking about focusing on giving up poverty mind as I go through all this. Or
Oh, no, not like that. You don't actively, then you'll be chanting, giving up poverty, mind, swaha, giving.
chanting that, but I mean,
No, I said if that was the goal, then we are better off giving up poverty, mind, swaha, giving poverty, mind, swaha. No, you don't do that. That's not the goal. So when you chant Vasudhara's mantra, right? You just generate your form as Vasudhara, and you just chant the mantra. Be present. Stay with the mantra. Then, light going out, So it describes here, right? On page 8, on a lotus and moon in her heart is the letter Bum, surrounded by a mantra garland. I just want to call your attention to how it's very interesting here. I don't understand, but I want to, in case you later realize this, then you have doubts, I will bring it out for you right now. At the beginning, when the Bum syllable appears, at the very beginning of the practice, the cushion is a sun disk. Now inside Vasudhara's heart is a moon disk. More typically, it's if the deity is sitting on the sun, then the disk in the heart is also sun. If the deity is sitting on the moon, in the heart is also a moon. But here it's not. The seat that you sit on is a sun disk, but the disk, the seat supporting the Bum syllable in your heart is a moon disk. So it says here, then light streaming out from the revolving mantra makes offerings to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and gather back their blessings. Then also light goes out, purifying misdeeds and obscurations of sentient beings of the three realms, establishing them in the state of nirvana and accomplishing all exalted activities. The light returns and dissolves into the seed syllable and mantra garland, which is that Bum. That's the Bum syllable. So chiefly when you're reciting mantra, you are actually having a sound and light show going on. You don't actively think, gone with poverty mind, gone with poverty mind, as your mouth chants the mantra. You should not actively think that. You also should not actively think like this concept, that concept, because then it's a lot of conceptual stuff going on. You just focus on what is happening, then authentically breaking down poverty mind will turn up. Yes. That is the part that I cannot explain, and it is not explained, and this is how the interdependence why meditating on Vasudhara has certain types of effects that is different, at least in the short term, from meditating on some other deity.
So another sadhana would be, we go through the same process, only focus on sound and light show.
Yes.
But another
Yes.
sadhana might increase some other.
Yes. See, somewhere in the back of your mind, of course, you know, oh, this is the increasing activity. Just like Oshinsha Vijaya, somewhere in the back of your mind, you know, this is a pacifying activity. But you don't want to go pacify, increase. Yeah. You don't want to do that. Right? Kind of leave that alone. Otherwise, you're seeking, right? You're grasping. So even I have said before, we all want to help others, but if too early, too quickly, we say, I'm going to practice this to help others, then it becomes a source of grasping. So watch out against that. Be careful with that. Then from time to time you think, all beings free from poverty. And then from time to time, if naturally, right, a particular person who is struggling financially might just turn up in your mind. Then you think, light goes out to them, and then let it go. Don't bring that person in front or, put the photo. Yeah, it might seem like you're helping them, but be careful. Now you're trying to chase after something. And grasping might arise there.
So with making offerings,
Uh-huh.
it's probably a similar attitude should be.
What do you mean?
Like when we're pouring the water bowls, maybe we shouldn't specifically think so much of giving this to the Buddhas. Rather immerse ourselves in that experience.
Yeah, when making offerings, filling offering bowls, getting flowers, buying fruits, whatever offerings that you prepare, remember, right? I mean, you're making an offering. Right? What else do you think about? I don't know, because I don't think that much, so I don't quite understand what people mean when they say they're thinking.
I think
What do you think of? Then I can tell you whether to think or not to think.
there's something in the background that's like afraid of forgetting that these are offerings to the Buddhas.
Uh-huh.
That like this activity is enriching.
Mm-hmm.
And that will like pop up
Mm.
while doing it.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, don't forget making offerings. These are for the Buddha.
Yeah, just calm down. Yes. Yeah.
Is it similar, if we're mindful about filling the bowl?
Yes.
that is
If
what
you're present,
gets us there.
if you're present, if you're, there, then that's devotion, then that's mindfulness, that's being there. And you should behave as if the Buddhas are there.
And that is the offering.
Yes. We should behave as if the Buddhas are there. Yes.
So then, fundamentally, with the practice of deity yoga in this way, it's just mind visualizes what we're meant to visualize, including visualizing the body as the deity, while speech does the mantra, and that's it. In a way, I guess. Not thinking of the particulars of right, like I'm doing this to do this, I'm doing this to do this, but just is that kind of it? Or
Yeah.
each of those
Don't
totally
think too
does
much.
one
Don't think too
activity
much.
each? Okay.
All the things that you hear, like in a teaching like this, right? You just kind of follow it. When you do the practice, you're not supposed to bring everything out, But you have to hear this many times so that it sinks into the background, right? Then from the background, whatever is necessary, whatever is appropriate, the interdependence will come together and bear fruit,
So,
rather than you forcing it.
okay. So like, instead of trying to make something happen like you were talking about, when all the conditions are there, then it's going to naturally arise.
Yes.
Or just contribute to the condition by doing the
Yeah.
mantra. Okay.
Gustavo asks, is there any difference in practicing Shambhala, Vasudhara, or Pati if all of them are for abundance?
Is there any difference? Well, what do you mean? I mean, obviously there is difference. If what you mean is like,
He wants to know if the results are going to be the same.
yeah, you want to know if the results are going to be the same. I mean, it's like saying, should I have pasta? Should I have rice? Should I have bread? Well, I don't know. In the end, you're full. Some days I feel like having pasta, and some days I feel like having bread, and some days I feel like having rice, right? But there are some people who are like, I want rice every day. If I don't eat rice, I will be hungry. Some of my relatives definitely like that. Then they're very sure, you know. Then some people I know, they don't care. They say, I just need to eat. I don't care. I don't want to spend much time thinking about it. Then good, you know. The main thing is don't. That's why I said. Okay, I've mentioned this before. Some of you might have heard this. If you ask me, I'm not particularly the kind of teacher, maybe because it reflects my own laziness or my own attention deficit, tendencies. I'm not an advocate of like, do this practice and do it every day for the rest of your life. I don't emphasize that. Yeah, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's misguided, but I can tell you, I don't emphasize that. My emphasis is your main practice is bodhicitta. How you are going to grow this bodhicitta, there are so many different ways. Do whatever is going to inspire you to actualize the true bodhicitta for however long. And if that becomes stale, you do something else. That becomes stale, you do something else. But don't do something else based on, I don't know, I think this is not so powerful. This is more powerful. Ooh, somebody said, that, comes from a very pure lineage, between me and that practice, there's only 2 generations. Oh, that must be really powerful. Oh, that is some secret empowerment only given to 3 people, and I got invited, and la la la, all these things. Huh? That I would say that's wrong view. So in my opinion, there's no problem practicing Monday this, Tuesday this, Wednesday this, Thursday this, if it is not based on, maybe this will work better, maybe this will work better, maybe this will work better, maybe this will work better. Oh, this is really profound. Oh, this is not so profound. Oh, this is really, really, really amazing. Oh, this is not so amazing. Don't switch practices because of that. But be flexible to change your practice, add practice, if it gets you to be in the mode of practicing the 2 bodhicittas. Otherwise, you are saying, this Buddha is better than that Buddha. Wrong view. Perverting the Dharma.
Which enlightened and worldly deities are in Vasudhara's retinue?
Again, this empowerment, this text only talks about Vasudhara. So that's it, Vasudhara is the transcendent Buddha of this practice. No mention of any specific retinues.
It is also said that those ancient practices have more blessings because they have been practiced by many people or masters. Is that correct?
Yes, you can say that, but should not be a basis of you jumping from one thing to another thing. Yeah, should not be like, oh, right? You're going to do this practice, someone comes along and say, I have one practice for even longer. Ooh, I'm going to go there, right? Then someone is going to come, you know what? This was practiced since Atlantis was still around. Ooh, I'm going to go to that. Okay, then becomes wrong view. Yes.
So in the vein of that, if it's something a little different, like with doing Mudra every day, you know, sometimes I would feel more fresh and inspired to just do Ushikshipita or something. But it seems like there's something to be said about persevering. Sometimes I don't know
Yeah.
what the line is.
Try it.
Okay.
You're not going to figure out in one day.
Okay.
Do it. Should I persevere? Should I not? Should I be stubborn? Sometimes stubborn is good. Never know. Do it. Don't keep circling the swimming pool, you know. Jump in. Or you spend the whole afternoon just walking around the swimming pool.
I guess be a little bit more.
And then you wake up and realize, I'm a heron next to a pond that has no fish. That's the Dhammapada. I'm a heron standing next to a pond that has no fish. What the other one is what? An old heron, yeah, an old heron. So it cannot, no more energy to fly to another pond to get to another pond, and then you're in the pond with no fish. Or arrows that have missed the mark. Dhammapada says.
I think this is part of what I get caught up in, is, trying to do it right, and that's a trap.
Yes, try to do it right. Yeah. Of course, we try to do it right, but we mistake where the right and where the wrong is. We fuss over what we call branches and twigs and forget the root. When we should be focused on the roots. Nourish the roots. Let the roots grow. Then the twigs and the leaves generally will be healthy. Sometimes twigs and leaves might be attacked by parasites. But as long as your roots are strong, you can handle the temporary parasites that might land. Yeah, that's, I think, helpful to think in those terms. But if you are so focused on just the twigs, the leaves, right? And then you don't nourish the roots, then there's no end to fighting parasites. The root, the core needs to be strong and healthy. And that's the four thoughts that change the mind, the four thoughts that turn the mind, bodhicitta, 8 worldly concerns. Dispel those things. Then these practices, become powerful. You don't need to manipulate. You can actualize them without trying to. Otherwise, your vajrayana practice becomes sorcery. There's a fine line between sorcery and vajrayana. In fact, I would say historically vajrayana, many of vajrayana's symbolisms and ritual implements and objects are taken from folk religion, coercive religion, like controlling spirits, beings, people, love potions, stuff like that. Vajrayana actually uses these things but in a completely different way. And so if we're not careful, our practice will deteriorate. So one of the Lojong precepts is, don't turn this into black magic. Another line is, don't reduce the deities into demons, into ghosts. There's a couple of comments I see, or questions, I don't know. Just give the comments a name. It's not.
John Young replied to Gustavo. It is funny because I hear from
What's Gustavo?
Gustavo asked about the ancient practices being
Yeah.
And so it's funny, I hear from some lamas that Dharma is more powerful because it's more recent.
Yeah, so generally, yes, of course, for people who advocate termas, of course, then you have to say termas are more powerful because they are more new, I mean, if you're practicing termas, you're not going to say, oh, the old stuff is really good, right? In the end, old or new, good or not, again, what is the root and what are the branches? If you have the root, I believe, if you have the root, right, you can join an evangelical church and attain liberation. Not to insult evangelical, just to show how opposite it is. It can, If you have the roots, right, doesn't matter anymore so much. But Gustavo, your line, what you said, I'm sure you have studied Gongchik, That's what Gongchik says, actually. Teachings that come from a long lineage is very profound, very special. So that's Jigten Sungwen's view, yes. But in the end, it's not about, more wrathful, better. Or even the opposite, more, hugging trees and pink rainbows, the better. No, those are all leaves and branches. Yeah, it's not the root. So hence, Jigten Sungwen says, whereas other people think, those other things are profound, I say the fundamentals are most profound. Unfortunately, that's been translated into the Ngondro is more profound. Then people think, oh, I should do 100,000 this, 100,000 that, 100,000 this, 100,000 that. And then after a few 100,000, you're like, not much has changed. It's not literally Ngondro in that sense. It's the fundamentals, the root of what the Buddha taught. Eight worldly concerns. It will mess up your life. Be done with them. Cultivate the two bodhicittas. That's the root. Yes.
Is the idea here like getting on a wagon and trying to fully experience the journey as it is, whilst being confident it is heading in the right direction? As in, we do not need to bring our hands about when the wagon will arrive and what the destination will be like?
Oh, you need to know what the destination is. Otherwise, this wagon could take you to places you don't want to go. You need to be clear about where this bus is going, I don't know much about wagons, but bus, you need to be clear where this bus is going, Then you decide whether you want to get on this bus or not, And sometimes where the bus is going, you don't need to know when to get off the bus too. So, and often it's not one bus that will take you where you go. You have to change a few stations, Okay. Today we're going to end here. I have a few things I have to do to conclude the conclusion rituals, the offerings, Thanksgiving, things like that. So while I'm doing that, the rest of you should do the dedication. So, yeah. Let's see. Who can share screen up there? Oh, I tell y'all what, those of you who are on Zoom, just listen while in the temple they're going to chant the dedication. So 142, I think, in the chant book. So you all do that while I do, actually, John, can you help me with this? Nathan, go ahead and stop. Pour a little bit, just a little bit in each. Just a little bit. Om Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Arna Prate Jaswaha Om Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Panyam Prate Jaswaha Om Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Pushpe Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Dute Pati Jaswam Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Aloke Pati Jaswam Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Yende Pati Jaswaha Om Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Nevede Pradesha Sum Sarvata Tangata Saparivara Shadda Pradeshtaya Soha. Bhagavati Banda Vasudhara, especially sweet, grant to your heart desires on the dear Lady of the Age, myself and all beings in samsara and in nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I Bhadramo Bundungi Yeshabaran Shinkini Sushi Tansupanam Rama enlightenment, may the teachings of the great Jumukha Ratnashri, the omniscient Dharma, Lord, Master of interdependence, continue to increase through study. Givati Nirduda, Lamono Gimatu, Unit Wachikama, Badia, Chanjan, Delenara, Pamela Campopa, Mahamudra Bhagavati Kumba Kajula Namji Doji. Bengaru Sism Terror, Cambodia Roshan, Cambodian Passaji Chelsea, but the Debajameta, she is so Sisman, Malu, Sachi, get a soon was it. The way some butchers in Rosema, you see Sandro Agito, setting Masatole Hana, Shingon Sendon Kajin Silmaso, Damchenga Sokita, she send the Menumago. He said that to the became a conjo Sunjita, she show. come over here, take a proper picture. Photographers cannot be lazy or shy. It will not work. Whatever the reasons. Okay, so ta-ta all of you. Thank you for joining us. We can actually see all of you in the big screen. We have installed a big screen and a projector. Nathan got someone he knows, hired someone to install this. So whenever you all participate from Zoom, now people in the temple can see all of you. So the next of this installment is July 16, then August 13, Kurukule and Ekajata. Then I will see some of you before that because I'm going to be in Mexico starting from middle of June to middle of July. So I don't know where all of you are at, but basically I have programs in Mexico City, then Leon, then Guadalajara, then Monterrey. So those are the 4 places. So maybe I'll see some of you in Mexico. Yes, May.
My name is May Ma, and I'm a volunteer and a sustaining member at Urban Dharma. On behalf of everybody in the temple and online and people who will be viewing the recordings later, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Lai, for sharing your teachings and blessings and knowledge and expertise with all of us. You've given us a lot to think about.
Don't think too much.
A lot of encouragement to
Practice.
But quickly, I want to call your attention to a few upcoming programs. Dr. Lai mentioned, this is the second Blessing Empowerment in a series on the 4 Buddha activities. And so there will be 2 more. The next one will be on enchanting or magnetizing, and that would be based on the deity of Kurukule. And then that would be on July 16th. And the 4th and final one will be on August 13th on the activity of destroying. And the deity will be Ekajati. So stay tuned for that. For those of us who are local, and it's available live streamed online too, you know that at the end of every month we have a program on cleansing smoke offering. So that will be happening not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow on the 29th of this month. So if you are local, please come to the temple. If you're not local, we live stream so you can be part of the party as well. But this month's Sanjo or cleansing smoke offering will be a little bit special because there will be an open house following the smoke offering. The smoke offering will begin at 10 and when we're done at about 11, we will begin our open house. So if you're local and you want to come and hang out with us, eat some snacks, kind of find out what we're about, please come. And then looking ahead a little bit, sometime this summer, and the details are being worked out, there will be a special program for volunteers. So if you are already a volunteer or you're thinking of becoming a volunteer, stay tuned for that program, and that will be coming up shortly. I think most of you attended the first Blessing Empowerment on Ushnisha Vijaya, and at that empowerment I was asked to make the welcoming and closing remarks, and silly me, I departed from my prepared remarks and I threw in this story about making kata offerings. It's kind of a crazy story. And the worst part of that was because I didn't prepare, I got some of the details wrong. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to tell it right this time. I'm going to try and tell it right this time because it didn't seem like major details, but I was unhappy because the part that I got wrong involved Dr. Lai. So I feel like I need to make a correction. So if you'll indulge me and give me a couple minutes of your time, I would like to tell the story again and hopefully get it right. So, so the story is, and this really happened, it really did. A few years ago, we had one of our major programs at Urban Dharma, and at the end of the program, when it was time to make a kata offering, it seemed like it wasn't happening. People were sitting there, and nobody was getting up to make a kata offering. So I was sitting there, and I had a kata and an envelope of donation in my bag, and I thought, it's time to make a kata offering. Somebody should start making a kata offering. Why isn't anybody making a kata offering? Well, I don't want to be the only one. I don't want to be the first one. So as I was sitting there, with all this blah, blah, blah going on in my head, some people got up and they started walking up to Dr. Lai and talking to him. And there was a little group, talking with him. Other people got up and they started putting things away and cleaning up. Other people got up and went to the bathroom. People started talking with their friends. And so the moment passed. And I felt like I had missed the opportunity that I should have done that, right? So I ended up not doing a kata offering. And so for the next few days, I kind of walked around with a kata and envelope still in my bag, and it bothered me. And so...
Thinking too much.
I know, I think too much. And so the next time I saw Dr. Lai, and this was the part that I got wrong, that I'm going to try and do it right this time. So the next time I saw Dr. Lai was maybe like a week later at one of our regular, weekly programs. And at the end of that program, I just went up there, I pulled the kata out of my bag, I got the envelope, and I made the kata offering right then. It was like totally out of context. It was like a little bit weird. And I thought it was very awkward. But it was so cool, He was like, he just smiled. He didn't say, "What are you doing? What's this for?" None of that. He just smiled. He accepted my offering. He thanked me. He put the kata around my neck. And I tell you, it felt great to do that. It really did, And so, like the next day, I emailed him because this is the coward's way, right? The real people will go up to the person and tell them, "Listen, this is what happened and this is why I did it." But I just emailed him and I explained to him, that this was the kata offering I intended to make at that event. I ended up not making it, so I made it kind of late and awkwardly. And he replied, "Practicing generosity needs no apologies." And so now is a great time to make a kata offering. And don't do like I did. So if you are moved to make a kata offering now, please come up and do it. Thank you very much, Dr. Lai, and thank you for a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Wonderful night or whatever it is over where you are. And thank you for listening to this silly story twice. Bye.
Thank you, May. One other thing is the 28th at noontime New York time. It's a Saturday. That morning there's Shantideva teachings, but at noon New York time, I am going to zoom into the Cusco group where they maintain a stupa that His Holiness built 6 years ago. It's their 6th anniversary. I cannot be there physically, and so they have asked me to Zoom in, and they will be at the stupa. They will start earlier with smoke offering, then I will join in, and it will be available on Zoom. I will maybe try to Zoom it from the temple, and then the connection here and the stupa will be very nice. And on that occasion, I'm going to give some teachings on the practice of loving kindness. Kyopa Jiten Sungkan has a text on the practice of loving kindness. We are in the process of translating that text. A little bit longer text than the usual things that we've been translating. But we have translated enough for me to give you an introduction to his way of practicing metta. Very special text, actually. Even though the translation itself will not be ready by the 28th, but I'll be able to draw some of the key points from that text and to share with everyone. So if you want to join us, pay attention on our announcements on our email or anything like that. Okay, tata. You all can unmute yourself and say hello.
Hello, goodbye.
Thank you.
Right?
Hello. Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Oops.
May I use this as a kata since I wear it all the time?
Oh, no,
No, okay.
because in theory I'm taking it.
Well, in theory, you can have